If anyone has any questions about how we collected those community submitted questions, please check out our website at lex.vote. So Dr. Sheehan, I will direct this one to you first. You will have 90 seconds to answer, and that is, what specific housing policies would you propose to address our housing shortage?
When we are talking about our community, as a psychologist, I think about how I teach my students. And I teach my students that if you're not getting your basic needs met, things like housing, food, safety, then you do not have the opportunity to thrive. Think about a hungry child sitting in a classroom. They're not going to really be able to focus fully on their education. So when we are talking about housing policy, we have to meet this basic need of everybody here in our community. Affordable housing is something we need to be thinking about. We need to be thinking about this for people who are on fixed incomes like seniors, people who have lower incomes, and we need to think about a secure revenue stream for our affordable housing fund that's been set up. One thing that we can talk about is like what kinds of fees we might be able to put into that fund. For example, we are talking about a short-term rental registration fee that might be a good candidate for that, and that's what they do in New Orleans. We need to think about mixed use developments. So growing up where you might have businesses on a first level and residences above. We need to also think about diversifying our housing stock. So not only single family homes, thinking about more townhomes, condos, rental properties. And I would like to see a liaison in government for developers to help them kind of project manage and move projects along a little faster, because I've heard specifically from developers that they have trouble getting projects through our system. So government efficiency is a piece that needs to be incorporated here.
Thank you. Councilmember Farmer, what specific housing policies would you propose to address our housing shortage?
Thank you. Great question. Great topic. The whole area is. I think it's about continued information flow to the public in as open a manner as possible. Most recently, we just passed the Florida area ratio changes in several different residential districts that give us the ability to have a little bit more density. These are the little things we do along the way to try to keep the urban service boundary in place where it is. There are other infill qualities and opportunities out there that people drive by and don't think about. I mean, they don't look at them in that capacity, but if you drive out Taste Creek Road, you see one on the right-hand side across from Emmanuel Baptist, and you know that there's a push to have a little bit more density, people live a little bit closer together, and so that we're all part of this, we're all in the same boat, pulling with the oar in the same direction. We're trying to make sure that Lexington protects its wonderful landscape, but it's wonderful cityscape too. But to do that, a little bit more density across all zones, and the opportunity to continue to fund affordable housing in whatever capacity that we need to, because those are some of the best dollars that we spend in terms of making the city and the lives of those people better. So there's several areas, great opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Farmer, we will start with your answer on this next question. Are you in support of accessory dwelling units, commonly known as, I'm sure, ADUs? They received a unanimous vote by the Planning Commission, but have yet to be supported by the council members.
I think this is a great potential tool for us. It is another tool in the basket that isn't there right now. I think the way that it's been proposed, or the way that it has been drawn up thus far, is a little too broad, a little too permissive, as it were, because I think you have to think about the neighbors, because you're making everybody's density higher in backyards right behind the house next to you on both sides. And you have to think about that impervious surface. You have to think about where that potential person would park or how they would come and go. And I think that there's a way to do this. It just needs to be pared down, to me, kind of in a second fashion in the way it is in committee right now. It needs to spend some time, and this is where we've lost a lot of opportunity for public comment, and we need to get that back, and I look forward to that day very soon. But the important thing here is that you have the opportunity to look at this figure out what's the best part about it and bring that forward. I think it's a little too broad a tool right now. It needs to be a little bit narrower because we're a city of rules that we understand. We understand what the urban service boundary is. We know what we're protecting. We know how we are protecting it. The important thing here is to understand what can go on in there. And these are the things that are important on a daily basis. So I look forward to continuing to make those decisions and to help those folks.
Thank you. Dr. Sheehan, are you in support of accessory dwelling units? They received a unanimous vote by the Planning Commission, but have yet to be supported by council members. Sorry, still getting used to this alarm. You have 90 seconds.
So the proposal for accessory dwelling units, we saw a lot of this originally proposed as kind of termed granny flats, like a place for seniors to age in place with the rest of their family. But I think that that is one use of an ADU. Another use is to do this infill and redevelopment that we're focusing on, that we have chosen to focus on as a community. And I think that this one strategy has worked in other places. I think we still need to continue to assess whether it's the best strategy for us. One of the things that we do have to talk about is regulation of these spaces. We have to bring the community in for more opportunities to hear how this might affect the existing neighborhoods that we have. And I'm excited to have those conversations with people and have been having them across our district already with existing neighborhoods. We need to talk about permeable surface and how stormwater is affected by increasing the surface area of a dwelling. We need to talk about parking. We need to talk about sewer system strain. So some of that conversation needs to be about the regulation or the restrictions that we might have. But we also need to think about, if we have this ordinance, how are we going to enforce the restrictions that we're placing on these units? And there are a lot of strains on our code enforcement system, which will have to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you. We will start, Dr. Sheehan, with you on the next question. Do you support defunding the Lexington Police Department? You have 90 seconds.
This is a conversation that I've been having with people in our district, but it's happening all across our community. It's happening at the state level and at the national level. And it's an important one. So as a researcher, I like to collect data. I've been trying to collect data on this issue from lots of different perspectives. I have talked with officers and done ride-alongs in multiple sectors. I have listened to the people who have been demonstrating and have gone to the LPD accountability website to see what the conversations are that are being had. I've been listening to the public feedback sessions. I've been listening to the sessions for the commission that the mayor convened on racial justice and equality. So I'm gathering all of those pieces. I hear the community saying that we absolutely need to be thinking about changes. This system is not working for the police. They can't effectively do their job when they have community resistance, and it's not working for a lot of people in our community. So some of the solutions that I have seen proposed are mandatory body cameras, thinking about more community policing efforts, but that is only one part. I would like to see more concentration on how we are triaging calls to where we might have a more mental health professional approach.
Thank you. Councilmember Farmer, do you support defunding the Lexington Police Department? You have 90 seconds.
Short question, long ramifications. I think what you really ask is a budget question, because if anything, you understand the importance of the budget each and every year. And in these past 2 years, where we've had to skinny down just to get through the year. I think when you take the opportunity of the pandemic, the opportunity of the social injustice to look at one of your top line budget items, I think you should. I think that when you spend that time, you can look at how the funds are used, what they're being used for, and what's best for them. Let's understand, we have a wonderful police force that has acted well under some very tough conditions, but conditions are changing. Social mores are changing. The needs are changing. And I would like to make sure that they change as fast as they need to go along with the needs of the citizens and the citizenry involved. I think that it's important to know that there are always going to be needs, whether they are social or political, or whether they have to do with how many people are on a beat in the middle of the night. But you have to balance all those. But the beauty of this at this time is to have the discussion, to be able to have a frank and open discussion about what is policing and how much does it cost? How do we want to pay for it? How much do we want to pay for it? Those are the great Q&As upcoming in the next 2 years I'd like to serve on your behalf for. Thank you.
Thank you both. The next community submitted question, we will start with Councilmember Farmer. Lexington has a growing problem with gun violence, especially involving young people. What, in your opinion, are some of the causes of gun violence? And as a council member, how might you try to do something about it?
That's probably the toughest question you'll ask tonight. And you'll ask a lot of great questions. You know, in talking about systemic change, I mean, how do you give children hope? How do you mentor them for tomorrow and not yesterday? What do you do to make them part of the community that's moving forward, rather than that they're at a sudden stop loss and they can't have a conversation without a gun? I think there's a lot of loving arms in Lexington. A lot of them are outstretched around a lot of folks. Can we do more? Can the council do more? Can I individually do more? I'm sure. What form does that take? Is it to bring other partners to the table? Is it to mentor folks on a one-on-one basis? It's all those things, plus more. You have to inspire people. As beautiful as we find our community, and we drive by the fences and we see the farms, we see the wonderful homes, we have to think that other people don't see it that way. They don't see the beauty of the horse farms. They don't see the beauty of their neighborhood. We need to inspire them on an individual basis and or a family basis. And there's lots of great partners we can get to on this, but I have lamented each and every loss, each and every senseless loss, and wish that I could have stopped it. I can't, but we as a council and community will continue to try. And that's the most important answer.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Sheehan, what are, in your opinion, what are the causes of gun violence? And as a council member, how might you try to do something about it? 90 seconds.
Gun violence in our community, unfortunately, is not a new problem. If you look even at the BUILD organization, which is a collection of interfaith organizations, they have been asking for interventions on gun violence, particularly for youth, for years. So this isn't a new problem, but we do need new and strong leadership to tackle it. Again, I like to look at data-driven solutions, and there are community-based interventions that have been shown to work in other areas, in other cities, I mean. So for example, like we even have research going on at University of Louisville. So here in Kentucky, we need to be looking at those models and seeing what will work here. But we also have to focus on constructive and productive activities for our youth. And we have a lot of organizations that we need to continue to support that are working on those things. So the One Lexington Peer Program is an example. Partners for Youth, I Do program, the Parent and Guardian Empowerment Page program. We need to continue to invest in these and expand them to tackle this issue.
Thank you, Dr. Sheehan. And we will start with your answer on the next question. What will you do to build a more sustainable waste management system in Lexington, or systems, plural, such as introducing curbside compost or other programs? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. So one of the things and the perspective that I bring to the council is that I am the vice chair of the Environmental Commission. And we were actually just on our monthly commission meeting before this at 4 o'clock. And one of the things that we were discussing was waste management solutions in particular. We have the ability to collect waste, right? But we need to look at some of the other things that we are doing. We actually have capacity, I learned today, for 300 years of waste collection. That's a little bit scary. So for me, because I want to think about how we are going to leave our world and the environment better than we have it now, because we need to focus on the future, right? And climate change and the quality of our green spaces and our air and our water. So I would support expanding a composting system for organics. I would support looking at expanding recycling. I know we have been talking about this for a while, and it's hard because it's based on what material we can collect in a clean way that can then be sold, that there's a market for. So that's another piece. But I would absolutely, and have been working myself on educating and bringing in people to thinking about waste reduction, so not using as much, and also reusing. And one of the examples of this is my Stitch It, Don't Pitch It program.
Thank you, Dr. Sheehan. Councilmember Farmer, what will you do to build a more sustainable waste management system in Lexington, like introducing curbside compost or other programs? 90 seconds. Let's see. Councilmember, you are on mute. If you could unmute yourself. Sorry about that.
And that was the best part. Thank you.
I was gonna, only problem with forums on Zoom. All right.
So tomorrow at 1 o'clock, I will be able to chair the Environmental Quality and Public Works Committee, which I have chaired for the last 2 terms. And our first time of business will have to do with rootware that we're using inside the Division of Waste Management right now. And we're always looking to improve. We're always looking to do better. I mean, in leading that committee, I've been able to help us get through the EPA consent decree a little bit faster. We like on the Euclid project, we get out ahead of the papers. I mean, we got the pipe in before the papers could get there. In terms of our waste management though, the ability to add composting to it is there. The ability to change the way we collect leaves is there, or totally differently there. And I matter of factly referenced it earlier, the ability to have public comment or not have it has impacted our ability to act. I think if we'd had the ability to act this year, we would have done something with composting based on Jake Gibbs' rich legacy and his work in this area that he wanted to continue. And I know that the council wanted to help him to continue. I think that there's ways to, if you want to be data driven, there's a way that when you pick up each container to weigh it and know how much is there and how much it weighs and what it might cost to take it away. There's plenty of ways to come up with more efficiencies here, but I think you need to involve the community in it because everybody has a role in this.
Thank you both. For this next question, Councilmember Farmer, you will answer first. How will you help communities create neighborhood associations?
Oh, that's a great one. And that's really the richest opportunity you get in a district capacity. You can do it in an at-large, and I know folks have done it, but when you serve at a district capacity and you know the needs of a neighborhood, the needs of the group, you have to have a little bit of kindling. You have to have a few people out there who are interested in ongoing nurturing of the neighborhood. And then you can bring them together in kind of a little bit of a collective, a little bit of a group, or before COVID you could, and then work on defining. I think to me, when you do that, absolutely, the most important thing you have to do is to define the neighborhood, define the boundary that you're going to work within, and define it in a way that you can make something happen. I've been part of these where we made great associations that were too big, too unwieldy to accomplish within. You can gain a knowledge and a knowing, but you can't accomplish as much. When you get to a size where the front porch matters and the people know the people across the street and behind them, you have the ability to make a neighborhood organization that works based on the neighbors. And you can make an individual difference there because they know what their needs are and you can help get to them and help change them. I mean, that's the beautiful part of doing this job, is the ability to come in, pave something, fix something, move something, get something done that nobody else could. You've done a great job. It's great service. Thank you.
Thank you. And now back to Dr. Sheehan. How will you help communities create neighborhood associations?
I am actually a board member of my own neighborhood association in Ashland, and I really see the power in people coming together in an organization like this, in a grassroots organization. So I am very excited about helping people collaborate in this way. And this allows people to come together and get their concerns and needs met as a group, which has power when you go to a council person or your city government. Now, when we're thinking about neighborhood associations, I know that we've had some neighborhood associations that haven't been supported enough, that didn't have enough involvement, and so they've dissolved. I would like to identify some of those, which I've already started on. That's one piece, is looking at who is participating in this way and who is not. Making a list, making a real assessment of that, and then finding ways to meet those groups and get people together. I also could see a mentoring program. We have some really successful and very active neighborhood associations within our district. And I think it would be a good idea to pair leadership of those neighborhood associations with the people who are wanting to start a new program, so you can help each other in that way and maybe combine some of your efforts.
Thank you both. Our next question, Dr. Sheehan, we'll start with you. At a time of crisis with the COVID pandemic and urgent calls to address racial and social injustice, nonprofits have stepped up in remarkable ways to provide crucial services for the Lexington community. At the same time, nonprofit partnerships with the city were cut from the proposed mayoral budget, though they were later restored by the Urban County Council. What is your position on the city's future agreements and partnerships with nonprofits to deliver needed services, enrichment opportunities, and more that ensure a safe, thriving community for all Lexington residents? You have 90 seconds.
Our nonprofit sector is vital to our community. We cannot allow nonprofits that are intervening with the community, providing services to the community and helping the most vulnerable to fold. We just can't let that happen. The city would either have to absorb some of these services at a higher cost, or likely those services would suffer, or if not cease to exist. So we can't allow that to happen. These organizations are meeting people's basic needs. We have to make tough decisions about our budget, but our support of nonprofits providing essential services is not an area that we can find savings in. We need people at the council level who would be dedicated advocates for the programs like our ESR program that fund some of our nonprofits before this funding is ever threatened. You should have someone who is advocating prior to that. It should never be in question. We absolutely need these services. We are seeing our education-centered nonprofits like Bluegrass Green Source and the Living Arts and Science Center step up for educators right now. We are seeing our places that provide housing and shelter for folks step up right now. These are essential services, and we have to treat them as such.
Thank you, Dr. Sheehan. And Councilmember Farmer, what's your position on the city's future agreements and partnerships with nonprofits to deliver these needed services, opportunities to ensure a safe, thriving community for all Lexington residents? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. That was part of the realization by the council, and I was glad to be part of the working group on that understood the limitations of the mayor's budget as she proposed it, and the opportunity for us to come in and to find funding and make it available for each one of these agencies, from AVOL to the NEST, everything in between, because they do things that we can't do for ourselves. They do them more efficiently and more effectively, and they do them with a caring love and guidance that I like to leaven and let them keep on doing it with. So as we move forward, I think it's just important. The council spent an awful lot of time on this funding mechanism and on the groups that benefit from it. But that doesn't mean we can't spend more, or a lot more for that matter, because we're going to have different needs going forward. I think that in the post-COVID pandemic world, what our government does and how we want to shape it to do that is up to us. It's up to us now and in the next 2 years to make funding decisions that are more solid, that make a difference, that people can depend on and know about moving forward and not wonder, am I out? Am I in? What happens to my folks? And if we can make that solid for people, that's the best single thing that we can do, because those affected communities need the help that these folks give them. And we're glad to give them, I'm glad to give them the resources to do it with. The council is too. We just need to focus on it moving forward.
Thank you both. We will start, Councilmember Farmer, with your answer to the next community question, and as our last community submitted question. Our communities lack consistent connectivity through sidewalks and bus stops. What steps will you take to improve this?
Oh, you never stop doing that. I'm working on a piece on Wyatt Parkway right now, where you could tell where the previous development and new development didn't sync up. We're going in to make that sidewalk work. We did it at the end of Courtney Commons. There are places that get kind of left behind as you move forward. And those are the little finds I love to find, love to take care of it, and love to fix, because when you put a sidewalk in where there wasn't one, like down the entirety of Tates Creek Road, which I help fund, help get done, you make a difference for everybody who's going to use that. And people didn't think they would use it, or some of the comments we got were not genuine towards having a sidewalk in your front yard of the city. And you should, because it makes you part of the city. And those folks that use those sidewalks or use the bike lanes or any multimodal transportation, we should have respect for and opportunity for. But in terms of sidewalks, there's always room. And Jake is gone and I remain, but there's still work to do on curbs, not just sidewalks, but curbs. We don't really have a curb policy. Our city, venerate as it is, needs a facelift in concrete every now and again in more places than one. That's the ongoing opportunity that I would like to take care of over the next 2 years.
Thank you. Dr. Sheehan, what steps will you take to improve the consistent connectivity through sidewalks and bus stops? You have 90 seconds.
So when we chose to live where we live, we chose this location because it was in an area where we could walk and bike to our jobs, and our daughter could walk to school. So thinking about pedestrian and bicycling safety is something that I think about a lot because it affects my life. I use these systems. I absolutely think that we do need to be looking at where there are gaps. I think about Richmond Road. There are large sections of Richmond Road where it is a large multi-lane, fast-moving highway that has no sidewalks on the sides, but people are having to walk to a bus stop. That is a safety issue. I look at where we might need crosswalks or where we might be able to lower speed limits to increase this pedestrian and biker safety. We have to be looking at those places, particularly around school systems, on corridors where people want to access public transportation, and within our neighborhoods where people say from like Kenwick might be walking across Richmond Road to go to a park. We need to be looking at all of these places and thinking where we can increase safety, and that would be a priority of mine.
Thank you both so much. We will be going into the coalition questions. So these questions that follow were drafted by the Lex Vote Coalition of 13 organizations. I would also recommend anyone that's watching, if you would like more information on these particular questions, the council members were asked to complete questionnaires of the coalition questions, and those can also be found on the lex.vote website. So again, after this, if you have additional questions about some of the responses or some of the questions that we didn't get to, please reference those questionnaires. I know that our candidates worked hard to complete those, and I would certainly turn your attention to those. Dr. Sheehan, we'll start with you answering this first question, and it is about the budget, which I know both of you have touched on, and which is a continually challenging issue for our community. In recent years, Lexington's budget obligations have outpaced its ability to generate revenue. In the fiscal year 2021 budget, this has dramatically impacted everything from economic development to social services, as we know. What strategies do you recommend to address revenue shortages while balancing spending priorities? You have 90 seconds.
So I think any conversation about our budget has to start with community conversations. So I am ready to have those conversations with people in our district to find out what services are important to them and what they would prioritize so that we can make sure we're addressing the needs that exist. I would advocate, of course, I've already talked about how basic needs are important to me. So I would advocate for continuing to address our affordable housing, our nonprofits, and the basics of governing. But when we're talking about revenue sources, we have to think about what our budget is based on. And the majority of our budget right now comes from occupational tax. So we have to work on getting people back to work, making sure our businesses aren't closing, and we need to think about how we can increase wages through more revenue generating, higher paying jobs. We've talked about our nonprofits. Our nonprofits serve our most vulnerable communities, but oftentimes they are not even making a living wage themselves. We have to think about that piece. We also can work on generating more revenue by building relationships with our state legislators so that we can lobby for changes in the potential revenue sources we have, because that is very constrained at the state level. I'm already working on those relationships, and you can see that by some of the endorsements I have, like from State Representative Kelly Flood and State Representative Patty Minter.
Thank you, Dr. Sheehan. Councilmember Farmer, what strategies do you recommend to address revenue shortages while balancing spending priorities? You have 90 seconds.
You know, for the last two budgets, we've effectively spent ourselves smaller. We have worked hard within the constraints of the funds that we had. And in fact, over the last 10 years, we really haven't had a tax increase. We've had a couple of fee increases as it relates to our sanitary sewer issue and the EPA consent decree, but we've worked hard to keep our government lean. We've worked hard to keep it efficient and to keep it on point for folks in need. The opportunity for that to continue to work is totally changed by the pandemic. And what our government will look like and what services we provide and how we provide them will have to come first, with the funding coming second. But that's where the new world dawns before us. And if we need additional income, I know that there are ways to generate it. I know that there's opportunity out there inside the four major funds that account for most of the income that we get. But the ability to inspire folks to want to be here, to have a job here, to live here, those all go to the bottom line. And you want to try to do all those things first before you come back for any revenue enhancement, because I think the last thing people need at the bottom of a pandemic is a tax increase. So the opportunity to work within our bounds is what we're going to continue to do for the time being.
Thank you both. Councilmember Farmer, you will be the first responder to the following question, and it is about urban growth. Lexington's 2018 comprehensive plan encourages infill and redevelopment as Lexington's main growth strategy. What specific implementation aspects of the comprehensive plan are working, and what challenges need to be addressed?
You know, I kind of answered this a little bit earlier in different ways, but we have a beautiful and special planning situation with the advent of our urban service boundary and the opportunity to maintain the rural area and enhance our urban area. I think you continue with changes like the Florida area ratio change that we just did, and the opportunity to continue to add some density as you move forward. It's a beautiful balancing act. And what it needs is what we can't have right now, which is more public discussion. More public discussion is part of our planning, more public discussion is part of our ongoing comprehensive plan work and how it plays out at the planning committee every month. And people are now more aware of what's going on at the planning commission level when something comes to the council, but they're maybe not as aware as they could be. And I think that's one of the big things going forward is people are aware that there's something out there protecting them that may not know what it is. They know Lexington's special. They don't know Maybe why? Because they haven't really been tasked in that area. The opportunity for us to continue to tell that story, to bring more people into it, and to make Lexington better inside and outside the boundary is the work that we can still do. We just have to bring a little bit more imagination to it and the ability to enact things. That's what we've lost over this year, is the ability to have a complete public discussion, have a council discussion, take a vote, and do something. I look forward to doing that again and to doing it in great detail.
Thank you, Councilmember Dr. Sheehan. What specific implementation aspects of the comprehensive plan are working and what challenges need to be addressed? You have 90 seconds.
So our comp plan is an agreed upon document that we as a community have put together that should guide all of the development choices that we are making for the future. And if you look at it, you can go to Imagine Lexington. There's a website and has the full plan, and it addresses everything from housing, from business development, environmental efforts, transportation. So things that are working in that plan right now, we are protecting and preserving our agricultural economy by maintaining our urban services boundary and our PDR program. We are assessing development on our major corridors. We are promoting infill and redevelopment and making progress on the consent decree. And we are improving sustainability of our government buildings. All of that is moving forward wonderfully. Some of the challenges we're facing, we are struggling to increase the diversity of our housing stock. We are struggling with affordable housing. We can work more on pedestrian and bike safety, as I've already discussed, and getting people out of their cars. We can do more to improve sustainability throughout our community and not just in government. And we absolutely have to address public feedback. We need to be having hard conversations about infill and redevelopment with our existing neighborhoods, but we need to support them in these processes so that our neighborhoods can maintain their character. We can't put the entire burden of our choice not to expand the USB on our neighborhoods.
Thank you both. And we have time for one more question. And Dr. Sheehan, I will direct this one to you to answer first, followed by Councilmember Farmer. Lexington has, which has been touched upon this evening before, has temporarily suspended public comment in all public Zoom meetings. Meaningful participation is vital to a responsive local government, and COVID-19 has created a new set of challenges in that regard. What strategies would you support to make ongoing public participation accessible for all citizens? You have 90 seconds.
You know, I, like a lot of people, I'm on Zoom a lot these days. I have transitioned all of my in-person classes to Zoom classes now. So I'm working with this technology. I think that we need to look at who is able to participate in our government, and we need to look at who is absent and then find strategies that meet them. I think it's inexcusable that we haven't had public feedback in our council meetings for months. And I understand why it was stopped, because we had people abusing the current system that we had. But other communities, even within Kentucky, like Louisville and our state government, have found ways to allow public feedback by doing things like having people be pre-approved to speak at meetings. So we absolutely have to be thinking about how we can pull more people in and engage them in this process. Because again, our city government, our local government affects everyone's everyday life. And that means everybody should have a voice in it. So I am excited about looking at these solutions and how to pull people in. We can do things like maybe fluctuating our meeting times. We need to have better recordings and documentation of meetings and notes from minutes and have those readily searchable. This technology exists, but we have not used it. So we absolutely need to be forward thinking here. We need to look at innovative ways to involve the community. We can't just keep doing what we've been doing.
Thank you, Dr. Sheehan. Councilmember Farmer, what strategies would you support to make ongoing public participation accessible for all?
Since I mentioned it 3 or 4 times already, I've been thinking about it. And I lament the loss of our ability to meet, and our ability to come together, and our ability to take public comment. But At 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, we're going to try a hybrid council meeting for the first time in about a month and a half as a next step forward to getting us into a position to have a meeting that's more real, to have public input that is there for us to have rather than to be shouted at or defiled in such horrible ways, but the opportunity for people to become part of the process again. But that's only one part of it. What we miss are the neighborhood association meetings, neighborhood get-togethers, neighborhood picnics. I mean, for this year, there's probably 20 events that I would have gone to gladly and happily on behalf of different neighborhoods across the community or across the district, but you can't go because they're not having them. The pandemic won't last forever. A vaccine will be found. We will come back to some sort of normal similar to what we had before. But the opportunity to do that on a neighborhood level and in person is most important. You can make a lot of decisions based on data, but when you make a decision based on data, on information right then, that decision is old immediately. You have to keep the people in mind and their service and their needs. Those things change. You have to be part to it. And in doing so, ask for people's support and their vote in this office, which I do. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. We're going to stop here because we are out of time this evening. But again, just want to thank you both for being flexible. I know that we all wish that we could be doing these types of forums and campaign events and campaigning in person, but we are making do with this situation together. So we just thank you both so much for your time and being on this call this evening, as well as completing the questionnaires, which can be found again for all of you watching at lex.vote website. So I just thank you people in the audience for attending this evening, as well as for submitting questions to ask to our candidates. So everyone have a wonderful night. Good luck to both of you. And thank you again for tuning in with us to tell us more about your visions for Lexington. Have a wonderful night, everybody.
Be safe.